So this is going to be a 7mm socket for this right here. Just take this off. Now this right here is going to be, if you already have the first iteration or the V1 version of the intake, just going to loosen this up and just pull this right off the throttle body. And as you can see back here, I'm going to take it off at the valve cover first because it's super tight on the intake portion of it. So just going to take regular little adjustable pliers here. So next up, the MAF sensor or whatever this is on these vehicles. I don't know if you'll see it from there, but there's going to be this right here. See this tab? Press that tab. Just pull this out and it should come right off. Once you do that, you can just pull this right out of the earbuds. Next, you're just going to want to pull this up off those rubber grommets that are around the two little retention screws or whatever. In my case, I had to actually unscrew. There's going to be a 10mm bolt up here and below it because it slips through the rubber grommets on the bottom of this. It was kind of hard to get off. And then the next step is just going to be to pull this out. It has this lip around the edge that would lock into this right here. Or you keep this little funnel in place. So now the improved version of this is going to go on the outside here. This is where that tie wrap comes into place. So you're going to have it like this. As you can see, there's going to be that lip. It's going to run across right here. That's going to interface with this indentation on this. So just going to get this in there. And you'll feel it when it gets in there. And then to keep that in place, you can literally just take that tie wrap, crank it down a little bit. You know that's not going to go anywhere. And now this is going to be inside the fender well, and I'll show you guys how to do that here in a second. But if you just want to look at the difference, all right, so here's the previous one up top right here. And as you can see, this area is much smaller. That's the previous one. That's why it would fit so loose into that cutout. I'll show you in a second in the fender, or the fender well. So like I said, here's the previous one. As you can see, it's pretty low pro. It's thin. I wouldn't even say low profile. It's just very small. And then here's the new one. Much thicker rubber. Just feels heavier, and it interfaces with that little inlet a lot better. It has that tie wrap to keep it in place, or a zip tie. As you can see here too, the beveled edge or whatever that's going to interface with the fender well opening is much larger. So right here is going to be the fender well opening that this is going to go into. As you can see, this previous version here, it doesn't even fit correctly. It's very small. I'll show you guys here once I get this in so you can see how loosely the old version 1 fit. So that's in there now. That's in. Look at all the movement in that. Like, it doesn't even seat correctly. Like that thing sucks. And it's good that they updated it. So now for this one here, it seems like it might be a little bit more difficult to install, because before I was able to just slide this in like this and pull this back through. But I'm not sure what the better design. I don't know, you can still do it, it's just hard. That shit's thick compared to the old one. Definitely fits way better though, I know that much. But this one now, you can't even pull that out. It's way more secure. Alright, so next, once all that's in place, just going to take the intake and you're going to slip it back down over these two screws or whatever, these two posts. Let's see, here's one, and there's the second one. And you're going to slide this in to the rubber housing, I guess, or whatever that you just installed. Make sure it fits in there good, which it does. Seems a lot more sturdy.
Yeah.
So the one thing here is going to be the two throttle body couplers here. So the old one's going to be on the right, the new one's on the left. They look the exact same. I'm not sure if anything's different, but I'm just going to use the new one here. It looks like they're about the same, but I'm just going to use this new one anyways, just to play. So to install this, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to take this little chamfered edge side. This is going to be the one that's going to be going onto the throttle body. You're basically just going to push it on until it hits the lip, which I'll show you guys here. So as you can see here, you're just going to get it. So this lip portion right here, and you're going to push that until it ends up bottoming out against the throttle body. So next you're going to want to take that 7mm you started off with to remove the previous one. You're just going to tighten this down. Next you want to position the intake. You're going to slide it into that air box slightly. You gotta work it back in. And once that's in the air box, you're gonna want to slide this back in. I usually leave this loose until I'm finished, so that way you can move it around. So a little comparison here for the hoses. The previous one was too small, where it would end up meeting up with the intake itself. I don't know if you guys can see that. It was super hard to get off and on. And this newer one, I don't know if you guys will be able to see. Let me see if I can get you a better angle on this. But the new one here is visibly larger, where it's going to mate up with the intake. So it's going to fit a lot better. So then next up, you're just going to take the, I guess, silicone tube, put it onto like the plenum back here or whatever. Then you're going to take this band clamp or whatever you want to call it that it came with, get that on there. So once you get to this point here, this band clamp, I believe, is not going to be 7mm, it's going to be an 8. And you're just going to take the pair of adjustables again for this clamp. So the last thing here I'm going to do is make sure everything is lined up inside the air box. Looks pretty good.
Okay.
And then you're just going to come back up here, make sure this is going to clamp down correctly. And this is going to be the 7mm again. You can tell everything fits a lot better than the original pieces here. This just feels much more solid now. It doesn't really have a lot of movement like before, especially over here. I'm pulling on it pretty hard. And over here, if you look at the airbox, there's not a lot of movement. And this rubber gasket that goes to the fender is going to stay there perfectly. So I'm just going to start it up real quick.